Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Loving obeisances unto the Supreme Being Vasudeva, who is everything there is. Janmadyasya yato anvayaditaratascha artheshu abhignaswarat. Tene brahmahridaya adikavaye muhyanti yatsuraya. Tejo vari mridam yatha vinimayo yatratra sargo mrisha. Dhamna svena sada nirastakuhakam satyam param dhimahi. We meditate upon the transcendent absolute being from whom springs forth this universe. He is present in all that exists and yet distinct from everything. He is fully conscious and totally independent. He revealed to the first seer Brahma the import of Vedic wisdom. The material creation made of threefold gunas appears in him as though real, like water in a mirage. Being eternally self effulgent, he is ever free of the illusion maya of the material world. We meditate upon him, the Supreme Being. Nigamakalpataror galitam phalam shukamukad amritadrava sanyutam pibata bhagavatam rasamalayam muhuraho rasika bhuvi bhavukaha. O devotees who relish a taste for divine love, Bhagavatam is the fully ripened fruit of the wish-yielding tree of Vedas, flowing as immortal nectar from Shuka Brahmarishi. Go on drinking the sweet nectar day after day. So now we are entering the 24th chapter of Srimad Bhagavatam, 5th Skandha. So we saw in the last couple of chapters the description of the various aspects of the terrestrial region as well as the celestial bodies above, starting with the sun, the moon, the planets, the stars, and the movement of time and all of that. Now we continue, and Shuka Brahma Rishi now talks about a particular phenomenon which is called as Rahu, which is not been described so far. This explains the phenomenon of eclipse, or both the eclipses, solar and lunar. So it is said that there is a heavenly body called Rahu. It is more of a, not a real planet, but a energy body, so to speak. And this energy body called Rahu is the one that brings about through its own darkness the eclipses, both the solar and the lunar eclipse. It comes between the earth and the sun, or between the earth and between the moon and the sun as well. Whichever way the eclipse happens, the eclipse is happening because of the movement of the celestial bodies, and it is said that there is a energy body called Rahu which is making this happen, which is also moving like planets, though it is not visibly seen. And this Rahu, and it has a mirror image called Ketu, and these two are very important in astrology. So whenever one does astrological charts, in addition to the 7 main planetary bodies we saw, starting with the sun and moon, and then the Mars, Venus, Mercury, Jupiter, and Saturn. These are the 7 primary, and the 7 days of the week are named after these 7, as we saw already. In addition to these 7, there is Rahu and Ketu, which makes the total of 9, called as Navagraha. And these two, Rahu and Ketu, are, as we said, energy bodies which are very mystical, because on the one hand they have a dark energy in the sense that they bring about solar eclipse and lunar eclipse, as we said, but also they are very conducive for spiritual journey, spiritual endeavors of any kind. So that is why it is said that any meditation or kirtan or any kind of spiritual activity done during the eclipses are supposed to be very powerful, because eclipses are not conducive for being outside and engaging in any material activity, but they are very conducive for spiritual sadhana. So these bodies are very mystical in that sense. So that is being described. Then after that, Shuka Brahma Rishi also completes the description of the what's called as the subterranean region. So we saw the terrestrial region, which is the earth, defined very thoroughly with all the dvipas and so on. And we also saw that there are 6 other regions on top. So earth is Bhu, and then there is Bhuvaha, and then Suvaha, and then on top of that there is Maha, Jana, Tapa, Satyam, which makes the 7 realms starting from the earth. And then there are 7 realms below the earth, it is said, again figuratively, and these are called as the subterranean regions. So totally, that's why the Vedas always talk about 14 worlds. They say 7 and 7, 14 worlds. In all languages in Bharat, this expression is there, that we have 7 and 7, 14 worlds. What it refers to is the 7 above earth and above earth, starting with earth, and 6 above earth make up the 7 which are above, and then 7 below, which are all below the earth. And these 7 are called as Atal, Vital, Sutal, Talatal, Mahatal, Rasatal, and Patal. Patal is well known. It is even used in many cultural references. It is the bottommost subterranean region. So the word Patal is used for the depth of anything if one goes below earth. But there are 6 regions above that. So the 7 are listed here. And then he says, Shuka Brahma Rishi says that these regions all have their own denizens who live, and they are all engaged in their own activities. And he describes each of the regions and who are there. Atal is got a demon called Bala, who is the son of Maya. And Maya is known for conjuring tricks. And so his son Bala is also known for various conjuring tricks and so on. So that's what Atala is. Below Atala is Vitala. Vitala has an entity called Hatakeshwara, and Hatakeshwara is actually a partial expansion of Shiva with his consort there, and they are there in that region. And then below Vitala is Sutala, and there is a demon called Bali. So Bali is very famous, and he is described in great detail. Bali, or Mahabali as he is called, he is the son of a demon called Virochana, and more importantly, a grandson of Prahalad, the great devotee of Lord Narsimha. So it is said that when Bali was robbed of all his possession, he was given this special place to reside in Sutala for the entire length of time, spanning the whole universe till dissolution. So here what is mentioned is the important allusion to the story which comes later, which has been also alluded to before. So the story is how Indra got jealous of Bali. Bali is a demon king and Indra is the king of the Devas. And Indra wanted to rob the kingdom of Bali. So he requested the Supreme Being, and the Supreme Lord went as a dwarf Brahmana called Vamana, and he asked for 3 paces of land. And Bali, who was even though born as a demon, being a grandson of Prahalad, he was a very pious person, and so he granted the request of Vamana, knowing fully well that it is the Supreme Being who has come and is going to take away everything. And therefore, sure enough, Vamana becomes Trivikrama, the infinitely huge, gigantic avatar of Bhagavan. And with the first space, he measures all of the material world. The second is all the heavenly realm. And then the third, he asks, where shall I keep? And Bali, out of his full sense of surrender, says, you can take my own head for that. And that's why Bali is blessed then. So this was all a grand test for Bali. And when Bali was ready to sacrifice his own head to keep his word to Bhagavan, to give him the 3 paces of land, the third pace he offered his own head to put Bhagavan's foot on, then Bhagavan was very pleased, and therefore he assigned him to live forever in this special realm below earth, which is called Sutala. And therefore it is said that one who gives to Bhagavan whatever he can give without any expectation. So Bali did not have any expectation. He did not have any second thoughts. He did not, even his guru Shukracharya warned against this, but he said, no, Bhagavan has come and I have to give him whatever I am asked. And so he did so with a calm and composed mind, and he was ready to give his very life. And because of that, he was given this great benediction of living forever freely in his own realm and attaining the Supreme Being upon dissolution. So it is said here, therefore, that anyone who even takes Bhagavan's name once, with, even if they take it not even sincerely, but they take it out of whatever the reason is, they're recognizing that they are helpless, that itself is enough for them to put the seed for being free of the bondage of activities. It says, Sakrin Namabhigrinan Purushaha Karma Bandha Bandhana Manjasa Vidhunoti. The person who takes the name of the Lord even once, he starts getting liberated from the bondage of karma or activities. So here, Bali Maharaj, of course, not only took the name, but he was ready to offer his very life, and therefore he was showered this grace. On the other hand, Indra, we can see, who was seemingly favored by the Lord, was actually not, because Indra was only given the sovereignty over the heavenly realm, which is only a bondage because it's a temporary place, and he was always living there, petty and always afraid of his position, which is what any king is always in the position of, and Indra represents that. So that's why Bali Maharaj himself says at the time that Indra is not very clever in that he asks for something so petty as sovereignty of the world and not for the service of the Supreme Being. Whereas my grandfather taught me properly, he is referring to Prahalad, that when Prahalad was offered a boon by Narasimha, he again said, all I want is to serve you forever. And so that's the very boon that Prahalad taught his grandson, who is Bali Maharaj. And therefore, Bali Maharaj also did not hesitate a moment to offer his very head as a service to the Supreme Being. And therefore, he says, Bali Maharaj says, that this great example Prahalad is there in front of me as my grandfather, and even though one can never measure up to Prahalad, because of my grandfather's teaching and example, I was able to offer my very life to Bhagavan and be favored by him, whereas Indra, though he thought he won by getting the favor of the Lord, in fact he did not get anything, because he only got sovereignty of the world, which is a petty thing compared to being in his eternal service. So this is the story of Bali, which of course comes in great detail in the 8th Skandha, 8th canto. But right now we are given a glimpse into this through the reference to Sutala. And then, so we saw Atala, Vitala, Sutala. Then there is Talatal, where the demon Maya lives. So we saw Maya's son Bala living in Atal. Here Maya himself is there in Talatal. Below that is Mahatal, where uh, serpents are supposed to live, very different kinds of serpents. One of them is Takshak, one of them is Kalia. Kalia is very famous because he comes to Yamuna during Krishna's pastimes, and there is the whole pastime with Kalia and Krishna dancing on top of the 5 heads of Kalia, which comes much later. Very beautiful pastime. So this Kalia otherwise resides in this realm called Mahatala, along with Takshak and other serpents. And below Mahatal is Rasatal, and Rasatal is where some other set of demons live, who are ever scared though. And then below that all the way is Patal, and Patal is where it's supposed to be the realm of Nagas, and Nagas are actually also some kind of demon serpents who live there. The chief of them is Vasuki, and Vasuki is very special because this particular serpent is used as the churning rod for, or as the churning rope for the Samudra Manthan, the churning of the ocean. So this is all symbolic, and it will be explained later when this incident comes. So Vasuki is the name of the snake. So with this, the description of the 7 realms of subterranean regions are finished, and the main region being, in terms of glorification of the devotees, is Sutala, because Sutala is where Maharaj Bali lives as a result of his devotion, ever in service and remembrance of the Supreme Lord. Then we move to the 25th chapter, which is continuing with the description of these of below that region. So Shuka Brahma Rishi now says that even below Patal is the region which is the base of everything, again figuratively, symbolically speaking, and this is known to be the realm of Lord Ananta, who is also called Sankarshana. So these are all different names of the first expansion of the Supreme Lord. So Ananta means one who is infinite. Sankarshana is another name. He is the one who comes as Balaram. And so we saw always that there are 4 primary expansions, 3 from Vasudeva, that is Vasudeva, Sankarshana, Pradyumna, Aniruddha. So the first expansion is Sankarshana, who is also Ananta. And he is of the same, he is not different from Shiva, if we really look into it with the description given here as well, because Sankarshana, it is said, is the one who brings about the dissolution of the universe, and he appears, in fact, very clearly refers here that at the time of dissolution, he appears with 3 eyes holding up a trident, which is a clear allusion to the form of Lord Shiva. And it is said in a very beautiful mystical way that this destruction is, in one sense, the end of time, or the end of the cycle of time, as it were. That is, the time of the cycle of time is infinite. It goes on round and round, but at the end of every cycle, this dissolution happens. But in reality, from a mystical perspective, this dissolution happens every moment the ego is collapsed. So that is referred to here beautifully by saying the job of Sankarshana is to collapse the subject and the object into I. It is so beautifully put here by Shuka Brahma Rishi that the real meaning of death, the real meaning of destruction, while outwardly the meaning of dissolution rather is destruction and the whole universe being collapsed and going back into seed form and then reappearing and all that. But mystically speaking, that happens when we are free of the ego. So he says here, Drashtru Drishyayoho Sankarshanam Ahamit Abhimana Lakshanam Yam Sankarshanam iti Achakshate. So that's a very beautiful expression. It says, Drashtru Drishyayoho. The seen, the seer and the seen. Drashtru is the seer, Drishya is the seen. Sankarshana means the one who brings the both together. Normally, our way of living is that the seer and the seen are separate. We take ourselves to be the seer, the subject, and we imagine the seen, the object, to be outside us, and therefore we act on the object out of desire or fear. And this is true with any subject-object interaction, not just with seeing, but thinking. The thinker wants to control the thought or indulge in thought. The doer wants to engage in deeds or stay away from deeds and all the rest. So this duality between the subject and the object is what is causing the movement of ego, and this ego dies when both of them are collapsed into I consciousness. So it says Sankarshanam, that which collapses the two, aham iti abhimana lakshanam, in the pure sense of I consciousness, when we recognize that it is pure awareness which holds the subject and the object, the pure I is aware of the subject rising, it's also aware of the object rising. And when we recognize this truth, that the very appearance of the subject as the so called I or ego is happening within the field of awareness, which is far more fundamental. The nature of the subject keeps on changing depending on the situation, and the object keeps on changing, but the pure awareness that is I does not change. So there is always the awareness that is the pure I, and the false I, which is the identification with various images we carry and the various activities we engage in, keeps on changing. And because that identification is taken to be the real I, there is a lot of misery and desire and fear and anxiety and all the rest. So it is said here that the one who collapses the two into pure I is Sankarshana. So that is the inner meaning of destruction, of death, is to collapse or to recognize rather that both the observer and the observed are the same movement which are happening in pure awareness, which is the only truth that there is. So this description beautifully is given by Shuka Brahma Rishi of the inner meaning of Sankarshana, or of dissolution itself. And then it is said his form is described as the same as Balaram beautifully. It is said that he wears blue clothes. So we see Krishna or Narayana wearing yellow, and always Balaram or Sankarshana wearing blue, and he has got a plow, which is his weapon, and he is white in complexion, unlike Krishna, who is darkish blue in complexion. And this form of Sankarshana or Balaram is very, as we said, it's very auspicious. Even though he brings about dissolution, it is in reality the dissolution of the ego. And therefore, it is said that Sankarshana enters the hearts of all the seekers of liberation and breaks the knot of ignorance in the heart through their identification to guna. So that's the essence of Sankarshana. He who enters the heart. So Sankarshana is again the Guru Tattva, the principle of wisdom, which is what we saw as Shiva too. That's why the symbolism is same here too. It is said that Sankarshana rises with three eyes holding up a trident, and he also has a plow. So the symbolism of both Balaram and Lord Shiva are interchangeably used here to show that he who brings about death of the ego is Sankarshana. That's the real meaning. And therefore he enters the heart of all seekers of liberation, mumukshus, and breaks the knot of ignorance, and thereby revealing their truth as the pure being, which is Narayana. So this chapter ends with a beautiful prayer by Narada addressed to Sankarshana, who is also called Ananta, as we saw, because he is infinite, and he's also called Sesha. So these are all the names. And so he says, how can one know Ananta, who is infinite? Because he brings about dissolution at the right time, and yet he is eternal and he is infinite in nature, and the whole universe is sustained by him because he is non-different from the Supreme Being. And this transcendent reality, which is pure Brahman, which is the supreme truth in which everything appears, is beyond any conception by the mind. It is possessed of infinite energy, and therefore, if one can even simply take the name of Ananta out of total surrender helplessly, then that alone is enough to invoke the grace of Ananta, because who other than Lord Ananta or Lord Sesha can easily provide liberation? So this is how Narada is glorifying him. And he says we cannot exhaust by enumerating his virtues even with 1,000 tongues, because his virtues are infinite, and therefore being infinite and with unlimited virtues and potencies, he who holds the whole creation together and brings its dissolution too. Again, it is both literally and symbolically to be taken literally. Of course, there is the cycle of the whole universe coming into being, as even science has shown us. There is Big Bang, before which there is literally nothing except the potentiality in a black hole. And from that, the whole universe comes forth. And then at some point, the whole universe is again reduced into a black hole. So, this black hole from which everything comes and into which everything goes is the cycle at the cosmic level, and at the individual level too. As we can see, even during deep sleep, everything merges back into the total seed state of deep sleep, and then when we wake up, everything comes out. So, the inner meaning of this is that the death of the ego while being awake is the way to invoke Sankarshana in our life. Because when the deep sleep happens, again the ego is not there, but it is a state of ignorance, and therefore it brings back ignorance when one wakes up in the form of ego and the subject object division and identification with the ego and all that. But when one can consciously die, in other words, consciously go into deep sleep like state inwardly, wherein the division between subject and object collapses into the pure I consciousness, then that is the true invoking of Lord Sankarshana or Lord Ananta. So, with this description and prayer by Narada, this chapter ends, and Shuka Brahma Rishi concludes by saying, "Thereby I have described to you all the regions of the universe," because he first described earth and then he described all the heavenly celestial bodies, and now in the last two chapters he has described in detail all the subterranean regions, the 7 regions below earth, and then the ultimate foundation of everything, which is the energy of Sankarshana, which is of course mystical and which has been beautifully glorified as the death of the ego itself. So with this chapter ends. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.